You are now off the curriculum with Josh Fulgham. And this week, we're changing gears and venturing into a topic that affects us all, whether we know it or not. It's something that we all once had as children, in quite abundance actually, but many of us lost it along our way. Those few who have held on to this characteristic have protected and guarded it as a close-kept secret. It has made people and organizations extremely wealthy. It's something that's around us every day, yet we're too preoccupied with our latest technologies and our busy schedules to take notice. This week, we're talking about creativity. Nir Bashan is the author of The Creative Mindset, 92 Tools to Unlock the Secrets to Innovation, Growth, and Sustainability. The Creator Mindset is the first and only business book on creativity, and Nir's pioneering spirit is a living example of creativity in action. In this episode, Nir takes us along on his journey to uncovering these powerful creative tools for success. He shares his very interesting past with a few behind-the-scenes stories from his time working in Hollywood, with lessons learned from actors and actresses, as well as his experiences working with some of the top hip-hop artists in music business. Nir's passion and excitement for creativity is so contagious that I feel as though I should offer a word of warning. Listening further may induce a creative yearning to return to your childhood imaginative wonders. Nir will introduce you to his concepts in his groundbreaking new book and provide you with a few of his tools immediately so that you can implement them today to help you nurture your own creativity. He discusses why this is so important for both individual and organizational successes in business. Now, let's go off the curriculum with Nir Bashan. Nir Bashan, welcome to Off the Curriculum.
Hey, thanks, Josh. I appreciate this.
No problem at all. Nir, tell me about yourself.
So before I jump into that, Josh, is it all right that, I'd like to just mention that my deep and unyielding respect for the men and women in the military and that put themselves in harm's way for, the greatest country on God's green earth. And I know that you're active duty, and I sure appreciate the sacrifices that you and your family have made to keep us free.
Thank you for that, Nir. That means a lot. Thanks for taking the time to say that. Really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I just, and I've hired military people for 15, 20 years now, and I feel like that, people in the business community and my community running companies, on the C-suite, we need to do a better job. Josh, of hiring, more people out of the military, more people with the skills that the U.S. military in all branches provides an incredible base of potential, of skills, of wonderful attitudes that work in the private sector so well. And, I've been on a bit of a mission lately, lately in the last 5 or 6 years, I would say, pulling pretty hard to talk to my fellow CEOs and CFOs and people who are in leadership positions and to hire people. And I'm constantly asking them, hey, you have to look at the military. You have to understand that just because people might not have a linear, history or a linear sort of resume that has this or that qualification doesn't mean that they would perform wondrously and wonderfully in a position. And so I'm always driving to get that awareness up, and I appreciate everything that you've done for us.
Wow. Thank you, Nir, for doing that for veterans. That's, like you said, it's very difficult to translate those skills that you've done for, 10, 15, 20 years into an environment where it's not entirely applicable. So for you to do that, that's really outstanding. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Yeah. There's the skills are they're focused on whatever the mission is. But for us in the private community, the foundations of those skills are easily applicable towards business. And it far ranges from project management. I've hired people out of the military to be an art director in an advertising agency who've never touched a Photoshop or Illustrator before, and they've risen to be superstars, and some of them have started their own companies. It's just giving people a chance, and if you're going to give somebody a chance, please, if you're listening to this podcast, you're kind of on the fence of who you should, hire for an open position, please give our military a chance.
That's a great statement. Thanks again, Nir. That's amazing. Perfect. Well, let's talk about you now. Thanks
Okay.
for talking about us in the military. Appreciate that. But you're on the show here. Let's get to you, Nir. Tell me, what are you doing right now currently? Who are you? Let's start there.
Yeah, for sure. So I am an author. I have a book coming out called The Creator Mindset, and it's coming out in August. It's being released by McGraw-Hill Business. It'll be available throughout the world on August 4th. They're printing a bunch of hard copies. They're translating it into 2 languages. It's going to be available on all of the Audible and all those things, and it'll be available in print. You can get it now if you'd like. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's in pre-release now, but it comes out in August. You can secure a copy right now if you'd like. Basically, the book is about how to be creative in business, in any business. And what we've found, Josh, is we've did a bunch of research before we released the book, and we found that there's not one other book out there that teaches people how to be creative. A bunch of books to teach you why you should be creative, right? But there's very, very, very few. In fact, none that we've found that teaches you the how of creativity. And in this book, I've written down from 20 plus years of experience running my own companies and running other people's companies, advertising agencies, and so on, teaching anybody who thinks that they're not creative how to be creative.
Interesting. What sparked that initial question for you?
Yeah, totally. So what I saw was that people who were creative, no matter what I did, and I've worked at a call center, I've worked at Subway, I ran a furniture refinishing business at one point, I ran a production company in Hollywood at one point. I found that no matter what I did, the people who were creative did well, and the people who weren't creative didn't do well. And so I naturally gravitated toward the people who did well and were creative because I wanted to learn their secrets, Josh. And I asked them, I said, what are you doing and how do I become creative? And by and large, most of them were just tight-lipped about it. They didn't share. They wouldn't tell me what it was that they were doing to be creative. It was intellectual property or something that they did that I couldn't ever try to do. And it was like almost like an exclusive country club or something where if you had a membership you were in, but most of us were not in. We were out. And it gnawed at me, man. It bothered me, right? And so I kept working and I kept doing my thing and kept the entrepreneurial spirit alive and running companies, crashing some into the ground, where I learned a whole lot more than actually running them successfully. And then, I sort of started piecing together a manual of creativity. And I finally decided to write it down because I felt like, it was just too good not to share. And I'm a sharing kind of guy. So what I did was I kind of came up with an outline. I met an amazing agent named Jessica Faust, who has something like 26 agents at her company that work for her. And, she gave me some amazing tips. We put the offer out. We ended up getting 4 publication offers, which is just incredible. And, because I'm kind of a first time writer. I'm not, I'm a business guy. And to get that kind of attention was awesome. So we ended up going with McGraw-Hill because they were really excited about it. Cheryl Segura, my editor, was very, very excited and still is excited and cannot talk, more highly about her. I love her and everything that she's done for the book has been incredible. And the book now comes out in August of 2020. It's been more than a 7-year journey. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that is 7 years.
7-year journey.
7 years. Okay. Let me ask you some questions about that. You said your book had 4 offers. Typically, how many offers do books receive?
So I don't know typically. I know for business books, the majors, you got 5, 6 major publishers. They don't publish that much. It's about 60, 70, 80 books a year. I have to check the exact numbers, but it is something like that. I mean, it's pretty dang close to that. And, what you find is they have hundreds of thousands of offers to publish. Hundreds of thousands of people are trying to get to be those lucky 60 or 70. And, I feel really, really lucky to be part of that. And I think maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe this topic has kind of touched on a nerve where there's a need for people to be talking about creativity in business.
And what do you think? You've got massive experience in businesses. What do you think that need is specifically for creativity in business?
So I think, Josh, that a lot of people in business today have abandoned the creativity that they were born with as children. Everybody is born creative, and as you get older and you go to school, it sort of like whittles away the creativity until you're forced to think analytically, right? We were all in kindergarten, first grade, whatever, at some point, and the teacher handed out paper and said, "Hey, draw this or do that." And, Josh, you probably drew in the tree with like pink branches. And I was like, black. And the teacher came by and said, Josh, branches aren't pink. They're actually green or brown or so on and so forth. And you sort of learned, right? Fast forward to, maybe high school or whatnot, the teacher's asking questions. They weren't looking for creative answers, Josh. They were looking for an absolute answer, an analytic approach. And as we get older and we sort of mature into these things, college is no exception, by and large. People are trying to change it, but by and large, it's like that. And you sort of have been drilled in throughout your whole life an analytical approach to things. And here you are, you're out of the military, you're out of college, you're starting a business. And what do? What would, of course you're going to follow, the analytical approach. That's what you've been taught. And,
Exactly.
when creativity starts to bubble up, you shove it down. You go, no, this is not the stuff of the serious. This is not the stuff of, the person that's studious and dignified. This is, the stuff of the loonies and stuff like that. And you miss opportunities to bring your brain together to function as one unit because you've developed one side of the brain that deals with analytical processing so much. There's some crossover, but for the most part, one side deals with that and then the other side deals with creativity and you kind of let it wither away. And the need that I see out there is time and time again, the need for ideas, the need for innovation, the need for breakthrough products and services. And those things can come from only one place, Josh. Those things can come from creativity and creativity alone.
Very interesting. So we lose that, as you say, over the course of our lives as we go through our education and as we are conformed to a specific idea or someone else's specific idea. How do we get back to that?
Yes, so I completely agree. I think that it's the analytics are something that's safe and something that is non-risky, and that's why we gravitate towards it. It's really somebody's idea of what should be good. So what I did is I wrote this book and it's got 92 tools and tricks and techniques to counter that drive to be analytical, to counter that pull towards doing things the way that everyone's been doing them. And one thing that your listeners can do today, if they were like, Nir, you know what, I want something I can do today to be, more creative, is I would say to start listening to that voice, that inner sort of child that is dying to get out there and express creativity. Josh, you know how when you have an important meeting or you're doing something the night before, you kind of lie in bed and you run these master chess games in your mind. Do you do that?
I do, absolutely.
Right. You're like, if this person says this, I'm going to say that. And you kind of prepare and you're up, instead of sleeping soundly, right? You're up trying to figure this thing out. So you do it, I do it, everybody does it. And the one thing that you can do today, again, to sort of embrace creativity is listen to those voices of that inner sort of child telling you, hey, do A, B, and C. And instead of like ignoring it and being like, oh, that's just the stuff of of the frivolous or whatever, grab a couple of those ideas that have been bubbling up. Creativity is a deeply personal endeavor. So how creativity manifests itself for you, Josh, is not going to be the same way that it manifests for me. And that is the beauty of creativity. It's a custom solution that is built within your brain and within your childhood experiences to solve problems for you in your business today. But you need to learn how to tap into it so that it can help you.
Wow. That takes a considerable amount of bravery, I would think, to do that, though. How does one get over that self-consciousness, that seemingly hesitation to act on those ideas?
Right. So it's really about learning to overcome the monster of self-doubt. We talk about it in the book. And there's a wonderful story about a very esteemed cancer researcher doctor who, was studying infectious diseases in different types of manifestations, COVID and different diseases like Zika and stuff like that. And then one day, this researcher, amazing guy, a friend of mine, and it's really, really humbled to have him among my friends, but he and I talk about him in the book, and he kind of took Zika and looked at a particular cancer that children get and was like, I got a kind of a batshit crazy idea. And what I'm thinking of doing is using Zika to neutralize. He found some similarities in the enzymes. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not, doing justice to the story. But basically, he found a way to use Zika to eliminate a particular type of cancer. And it took an incredible amount of bravery, like you were saying, an incredible amount. I mean, this guy talks all over the world, and he's Dr. Ken Alexander's his name. He's famous for this stuff. And for him to come out and say, I've got a creative idea, one that's completely from left field, and kind of back it and go with it, took a considerable amount of courage. But Josh, that courage is essential if we are to sort of help society. In this case, it's very obvious, but you might be thinking, Nir, I'm a manufacturer of parts in Fort Collins. I get it in the doctor's story, how, being courageous leads to the potential of saving lives. But how does being courageous help me? And the fact is that it connects you to who you really are and what you're really doing. And that manifestation rings crystal clear. That authenticity is something that in the marketplace, once you put out in your product or service, resonates with consumers, business to business, whatever line of work you're in. It resonates with consumers in an incredibly viable and really profitable way. And being able to tap into who we are, who we really are, and using that courage to express that inner creativity is just plain good for business.
Absolutely. There's an element of truth and an element of honesty in being creative. And I think one of the most profitable and successful companies at doing that would be Apple.
Yeah.
What other examples would you have?
Tesla is a good one.
Oh, amazing.
But there's what Elon Musk is doing on the Space Coast in Florida with it's amazing. But I think that we kind of rush to maybe, Josh, look at a couple of companies, but we're not looking at the day-to-day creative heroes, right? So there's a dry cleaner by my house that's doing a monthly all-in. You can come in every day if you want, and 5 times a day and bring loads of clothes, but he charges you one flat fee per month. And the brilliance is that you're like, oh, totally, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to come in every day and get all my dry cleaning done.
Right.
But you don't. And you pay the monthly because it's a good, convenient thing. And you don't have to worry, do I have 5 shirts and 2 skirts this time and, 3 jackets or whatever. You just bundle it up. You bring it in. You pay the monthly and you're happy. He's happy because he's, kind of done the math and figured out that, hey, this is profitable most of the time. Not all the time. And that's okay, but it's profitable most of the time. That is creative genius, Josh. That's creative genius. Dude, I love that kind of stuff, right? And that guy's a hero. And he's continually looking at his business and changing what it is that he's doing to be to be creative, and that's something that I think we can learn a lot from.
Absolutely. Creativity is at the ground floor all the way up to the major organizations as well.
Isn't it amazing?
It is very awesome. I'm definitely going to open my eyes a bit more and look around and be more perceptive to the creative ways that people are doing business. That's really good to highlight. I'm going to start taking note of that for sure.
Yep.
Let's go back to your past for a minute, Nir. You said you had several businesses that you crashed into the ground. Was this because of lack of creativity at the time?
Yes. So we talk about it in the book, and I say we, it's like the royal we, like me, right? There is no we. I mean, I'm a small company of 3 people, but anyway, yeah, I've learned more from failing than I have from doing things right. And I think that we're so afraid to fail these days, Josh, that, we try to hedge our bets, and we do what I call rest upon success, or the rust tool, rest upon success tool, where we just kind of like carve out a little molehill of our own, and then we just kind of rest on it, never trying to do better, because let's face it, at some point in business, you're successful if you're bringing money in, so you're bringing money in, you figure, okay, cool, I'm doing something right. And then you stop. And a lot of companies, a lot of careers out there, people, trying to get to the next level of their career do that too. They get a promotion and then they stop taking extra initiative. They stop sort of looking at the marketplace. They stop adding skills that they can use at the workplace. Companies are no different. You stop because you've had some success, but that's the most dangerous thing that you can possibly do. Why? Because you want some failures. You want to go learn from different things, because in failure can come the amazing seeds of success and the amazing seeds of creativity to tell you what not to do. So yes, I've learned far more from crashing and burning than I ever have from running successful companies.
Right. Again, when you tell me these stories, I keep going back to bravery, that you have to stand back up once you fail to keep moving on.
Right.
And what was it that drove you once you experienced failures? What was it that drove you to your next project?
What personally drove me was this relentless pursuit to try to figure out why people were doing better than me. I just couldn't get it. I was so admiring people that started their own businesses and did better, that had an ad agency and got more clients, that, were in film production and sold more screenplays than I sold. And I was like, what are these guys doing? And, how do I kind of do that? And it was I think for me personally, my own inner creativity told me to keep going. It was a grit and a determination to get better and better. But that's just me, right? So your thing might be totally different. Your motivation might be, to get rich, which is fine. It's a fine motivation if that's what you want to do. Your motivation might be altruistic. You might want to make a lot of money so you can give it away, or, something like that. It might be that you want to set your children up for success so that they can have and inherit a business. There's a million different reasons that creativity will sort of boil up and come up with, manifest itself in how you view it. And that is as important as anything, because it's really what's going to keep you going. And your ability to find that true self, that essence of what creativity means to you and how it manifests itself in your business, is essential.
Wow, that's very profound. Great statement. All right, you mentioned again, so let's talk about Hollywood for a moment. You said you were working in Hollywood, which is the epicenter of creativity. Tell me about your experiences there in Hollywood.
So I worked for many, many years in Hollywood. I worked with famous actors and celebrities and all of these people. I was impressed by, I think, the codification of creativity there, where, an actor or a musician really took it seriously. They got up every day, and did what they needed to do to become more creative and to have more options in their business. Their business was being creative, and it's important to learn from them. I think you hear a lot of the stories of the exceptions to that rule, right? You hear the actor that parties all night and shows up, but those are few and far between. At least that's what I saw. On the music side, I saw some amazing musicians. For the beginning of my career, I worked almost exclusively in hip hop. I've recorded, many albums and worked in the hip hop community on different records and stuff like that. And I just discovered that some of the nicest people in the world are hip hop artists that just sort of get off the mic, after rapping about this or that, or this hardship or that hardship. And, it seems so like primal and, maybe aggressive, and maybe there's heartache there, and there's, sort of a yearning, and, they get off the microphone and they're just the nicest people on earth, right? They have families and they take this stuff seriously. It's not, they don't fall into it. It's who they are, and it's their creative manifestation coming out. And I've had many really great experiences with, people in the hip hop business, just kind of, where if I were to tell you their name, you're like, no way. And I'd say, yeah. They call their wives and tell them they're running 15 minutes late from the recording studio, and it's not about drinking and doing drugs and stuff like that. It's really, okay, a deadline is coming up. We need to hit the deadline. This particular song is being released on iTunes at this time, and we've got 3 days to schedule it, and the musicians have to come in at this time. I mean, it's amazingly pragmatic when you look at it. You think it's so cool and exciting and crazy. It's got to be crazy, right? But it's not. It's not crazy. It's 9 to 5 kind of stuff. Nobody wants to work at night because everybody has children and families at home they want to get back to. It's an amazing world when you're in it, and you see how hard people actually work.
Wow, that's a neat behind the scenes look. I can just imagine some of our hardcore hip hop artists picking up a gallon of milk on the way home so they don't get in trouble.
Literally, I have a story of one. I can't tell you the name because his daughter's famous now. But back when I worked on their album, he was on the mic, and it was hip hop, man, hardcore stuff. And then he gets off, gets his phone out. He's like, yeah, honey, I'll be home in a bit. Let me talk to my daughter or whatnot. And she comes on the phone, and I only hear one end, right? I only hear his end. But, he's like, of course. Yeah, of course we're going to get to the playground. It's going to be great. Yeah. Well, I'll get home before, it's that whole thing. And, now she's kind of a famous, influencer or whatnot on Instagram. And, she's got her own clothing line and stuff like that. But it's like, it was just the heart of the matter was, I think, what is the heart of the matter for all of us. It's, the most important values that we have, which is, family and friends, country, God. Those types of elements were really foundational in American hip hop, and to some degree, for different people. It's not kind of the same values for everyone, but it's just amazing to see those foundational values that guide most of us in such an interesting environment.
Of course. That's a neat story. Do you think work ethic is what you took away from Hollywood? You had mentioned that. Was there anything else?
I think I took away a lot of work ethic. I think I learned a lot from creative people that I've worked with, really how to run a business. They were creative as a means to increase their revenue and thereby squeezing as much profit as they could from their creative ventures. And what I was able to do, Josh, is take that creativity that I found in Hollywood and in other businesses and kind of tie it together to businesses that are completely unrelated from making money in creativity itself. Businesses like manufacturing, medicine, insurance, plastics, different types of business where, it had nothing to do with a celebrity or a famous song or an actor or something like that. But I learned from these business owners, different production companies and stuff like that, how to be really creative and how that creativity can be used by anyone, anywhere.
Were you actually mentally taking notes? Were you keeping a journal? How were you documenting all this leading up to your book?
So I'm a big proponent, and it's a great question. I'm a big proponent of writing stuff down. You have to keep writing things down. Your memory is not that good. And it's often clouded by emotion and different things that kind of creep in there that distort really what the meaning is of the transaction that you saw, or the product or service marketed in a certain way, so on and so forth. So I'm a prolific journaler. I write stuff down. Now with technology, it's so easy to keep notes. I've got the OneNote or whatnot on my phone, and it connects to my email and all that stuff. You got to keep writing stuff down. In life, you're going to experience things and you're going to see different manifestations of creativity. And it's up to you to collect these things together and use them as a platform for moving forward. I think not enough of us in business are really kind of piecing together their experiences into a cohesive story.
I would agree. It takes time. It takes effort to journal. So you use OneNote, and you mentioned that. How other ways do you journal, and when, what times of day? Can you talk to me about your process?
Yeah, so I really I try to write stuff down as soon as I uncover it, right? So you don't have to write volumes of this stuff. You pull out your phone now and you see the dry cleaner by my house. So I write business model, amazing, unlimited dry cleaning. That's it. That's all you do. It's what, 10 words, 8 words there? It's really, and I'm sure like you've seen some amazing stuff. I'm sure you've seen some horrible process. And honestly, writing both down is probably a really helpful way to catalog what you've seen. Excessive waste and horrible sort of hallmarks of military are sometimes, incredibly depressing and ripe for change. But there's also amazing organizational things that you can literally take from what you've seen and implement them in business.
Right. So you take those 8 to 10 words that you may see throughout the day. Do you expand upon them later on in a pen and paper journal, or do you type about them? What's the next step from that?
So I have like a bunch of these in my phone and on the computer. Some of them become articles. Some of them become topics for my videos. I record, minute and a half videos, put those out there, get them on my mailing list, stuff like that. Sometimes they get expanded into articles. Sometimes they just become a video. Sometimes they're just a footnote for me to talk about on a podcast. I think just separating the anxiety of having to do something with the idea and just having it is a pretty awesome thing.
Right. I believe it would make you more aware of your surroundings, aware of creativity, and it brings it more to light if you are reminding yourself, or you create a habit of writing it down and recognizing it.
I think it's important. Yep.
Wow. Did you know through your journaling and through your notes that would lead to a book in creativity, or was this something that you knew all along? I'm eventually going to write this book. How did that process come about?
So yeah, I think I kind of was in a position about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago now, maybe 7 or 8 years, that I could codify the process of creativity. And so I wrote it down. I did a lot of teaching at Art Center, College of Design in Pasadena, in the advertising program and film programs. And I did teaching at UCLA in Los Angeles. And I sort of, through that process, was able to take a lot of what I've learned and throw it back at students. And I was able to build workshops. Some of the workshops that I built back then, I still use today in the corporate environment when I'm out doing workshops for different companies. And what I found was that this codification of creativity, I was able to kind of bounce it off of students. And students are in a particularly interesting sort of demographic, because they can care less what you think of them, and they can care less about upsetting the boss or missing a deadline or whatever. So they're brutally honest, and yeah. So I got really lucky, and I was able to kind of bounce ideas off of them. I knew about 7 years ago that we had a book. I started to research pretty heavily to see if anybody else was doing anything like it, and they weren't. And I was under a lot of stress thinking that I have to get the book out there before somebody else does it. And I'm kind of glad that nobody did it.
Right. That is somewhat of an interesting point. Why do you believe there has not been any books on creativity, business books related to creativity so far?
I think because, most people think of creativity as kind of playing an instrument or painting a picture or drawing or something like that. And I think that the people who are creative don't want to share because it's been incredibly profitable for them to be creative. So I think those are the two driving factors. One is that people don't think that it's serious enough or whatever. It's art, art is not for business. And then two, I think that people have been very protective of creativity as an intellectual property and not wanting it to get out into the marketplace. But I think it's high time that it gets out into the world. I think that having a codification of creativity that anybody can do no matter who they are or what business they're in is an incredibly powerful tool. And I have sort of I want to share everything I know. I'm like, the chef that comes out with a new, maybe tweaks an ingredient and comes out with a new flavor or whatnot. They rush out to have somebody sample it so that they can go, oh, wow, this is amazing, and that type of energy and sort of celebration of something a little bit different and a little bit creative is really important to me. And that's why I wanted to get the book out.
Wow. That's amazing. Your enthusiasm is so contagious about this as well. That's perfect.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah. I cannot, this is who I am. Like, this is kind of what I do. And I've set up a company to do this all day. I go out and talk at different companies and help them become more creative. And I get the same, everything that you're asking, I've heard before, right? It's like, well, Nir, we don't really need this creativity thing. We have deadlines. Like, what can that help me? Or, I'm not creative. Creativity is for people that play instruments. I don't play an instrument. I don't draw. How can this help me? It's the exact same sort of questions that you're asking, Josh. And I think like the fact that it's getting out there is allowing people to tap into that inner creativity. And I think it's going to lower anxiety. I think it's going to lower people's utter quest in life to control every damn thing. It's okay. You got to let it go sometimes. And letting it go is a hallmark of creativity. Knowing when to stop, after 20, 30 years of relentless pursuit of one thing, just letting it go and moving on is an awesome gift that I can give people.
Yeah, good for you. And thank you for writing a book like this. That's great. I think what you just said ties into what we were talking about earlier as well. At the beginning of the conversation, when we were talking about coloring our different trees. In business, when someone does color a tree, so to speak, differently, they're looked at differently. They are perceived as different if they're not in marketing, let's say, if they're not in advertising. Being creativity in this role will bring an individualism type of perspective to the employee role. Yep. Is that correct?
Yep, okay. Absolutely. And that individual approach today, Josh, is more important than anything. Listen, we're facing crisis everywhere in the world. I'm actually trying to write an outline now for the next book, which I think might just be about crisis and how creativity deals with it. But there's no better time than today. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, how can creativity help me? Well, there's no better time than today, if ever there was a time, to embrace the principles of creativity so that you can be an individual. And that individuality and that specialness and that sort of secret sauce of the way you're doing something as opposed to someone else is your market differentiator. And that market differentiator is critical at a time where the startup costs for a business right now are next to nothing. The entry point for a new idea in the marketplace is next to nothing, right? So how do you compete when everyone has access to the same resources? How do you compete when everyone is kind of doing roughly the same thing? There's only one way to compete and one way to sort of deal with these things, and that is to be creative. Because what it will enable you to do is to fashion a product or a service that is uniquely you. And that in itself is tenfold better than any patent you can get from the patent office or any registered trademark or whatnot, because that's you and that's that's who you are. And if you're really in tune with that idea and you're really in tune with your inner sort of creativity, it'll allow you to evolve into, amazing sort of positions. Eileen Fisher did that with her clothing line. She'd been in the fashion business for, I think, 20 some odd years, and just having been in fashion for more than a couple of years, it's like in dog years. You add 7 to every year. It's so cutthroat, and manufacturing of clothes costs pennies these days. It's not the designing, but the actual making of this stuff. I mean, it's cheap. So here we are in an insanely competitive marketplace, and this woman literally is able to change constantly with the market, constantly with different tastes and different, verticals. She's constantly able to reinvent herself over and over again to stay relevant. And we could learn a lot from those types of people. Why? Because she's in a creative mindset. She is the embodiment of the creator mindset. And we talk a lot in the book of other case studies of people that are doing it right and people that are not doing it so right. And due to my sort of philosophy, it might be a little skewed and it might be a little bit uncomfortable. Sure. But Josh, I believe you learn far more from the failures than we do from the successes. And so I kind of mapped out the book with a bunch of case studies of companies that should have been really successful or were successful at one point and are now irrelevant because they stopped being creative.
Wow. I 100% agree with you. 100%. It's interesting that you were in education, especially given the creative field and the time that we're in right now. I'm curious what your thoughts are, because you briefly mentioned it about how education, there are some people that are trying to change it. What do you believe the changes are that need to occur? Where and how could that happen?
So it's a good point, Josh. There's people like Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School right now that's doing amazing work reshaping graduates. She gets a lot of kids in the program, and some of them are not kids; they're well into adulthood. That are, you can imagine Harvard takes in probably the cream of the crop, right? It's probably the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%. And she's developing programs now to help them deal with failure, because these aren't students that are used to failing. And I think that's an amazing approach, and it's very creative. Why? Because you can teach curriculum all you want, right? You can teach sort of the certain rhythm and method of true and tried sort of approaches. And there's a place for that, and it's important. But at some point, you got to keep up with the reality of what's going on. And the reality is that they're getting in this case study, in this example, they're getting kids in that have never failed at much of anything in life. They've always been top of the class. They've always been, sort of the top of the heap. And, here they are in business school, and they have to learn how to deal with failures. So she's creating, I think, an environment where creativity can thrive, because how they deal with the failures in my sort of approach is going to tie them into who they are as people. And it's going to be sort of their inner guide, their compass, to tell them what type of business they should be in, what type they shouldn't be in, so on and so forth. I remember, Josh, I did a talk a little while ago, and I had a gentleman come up to me in the restoration business, when things flood and or there's a fire and they come and fix it. There's several of those businesses. And, he was like, Nir, how did this help me? I love it. Creativity, it's great. But like, I've got clients, I've got deadlines, I've got, several dozen trucks and, hundreds of employees and stuff like that. What do I do? I said, well, why are you in that business? He's like, I fell into it. I was like, nobody falls into a business. Dude, there's no way. And he's like, no, I fell into it. It just kind of happened. And I said, let's talk a little bit about you and your inner creativity and sort of, who you were as a child and stuff like that. And, we talked just for a few minutes, but I uncovered that this guy has like, he's the neighborhood guy where everyone borrows tools from him, and he's got know-how. He can fix an air conditioning just as soon as he can fix a roof, just as soon as he can fix a busted drive shaft in the pickup. So I said, well, dude, you've always been sort of a helpful guy. He's like, oh yeah, I never really thought of it that way. I'm like, you're in the help business. That's what you're doing. And he was like, I am. I said, yeah, dude, he's like, well, we're in the restoration business. I guess we're helping people. I said, the creative identity of who you are and what it is that you do is that you take a problem and then you help people through that problem. I said, how can that help? If you use that tomorrow and you think about it creatively like we're doing, how would that help? He's like, well, we got into such a rhythm that, we would show up at people's houses and write reports or whatnot and sort of do proposals and get out of there. And he's like, I really want to position my business a little differently. So I'm going to put on my business card, like, here to help. I'm like, dude, cool. You're already starting to go down the creative road. What else can you do? And, he called me several months later and he, told me that they changed the billing model to like an a la carte offering, which I thought was great, not to overwhelm people. And he said that, 9 out of 10 customers that bought one a la carte service ended up buying the whole suite of services later because he was able to, through his customer service and being creative about how he viewed customer service, he was able to build his business. And so what's really important to me is empowering people to understand that they can tap into creativity to really make more money, and improve their businesses if that's what they want to do. Because we don't fall into anything. You're not on this podcast, Josh, because you fell into it. There's a reason. And I'm sure if we talked for 5 or 10 minutes, I could find out, what it is that you're doing and who you are and how your creativity is manifesting itself. And I think if we encouraged it a little bit and maybe, mapped out a bit of a process, sort of like what I do when I'm out consulting, I think that you can be incredibly successful, on top of the impressive successes that you've already had.
Wow. I may have to take you up on that offer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we'll postpone that one, but we'll come back to it. I want to keep focus here on your book, and I've been eager to ask this question. It's been sitting on me for a moment, so I do want to get this out before we run out of time. Looking forward into the future of business as we continue evolving, especially given the future with artificial intelligence, with technology upgrades. Where do you see creativity fitting in the future, and how will it be impactful for people to start applying it today?
Great question. Josh, I feel that creativity is a return to our basic building blocks of who we are as humanity. The first creative person on Earth was an early woman named Harriet, and she staved off the beast that has killed, her entire village by putting a sort of an arrowhead on the end of a long stick and poking it at him. Nobody since that time has thought of doing that. And she was the first person to be creative. We talk about her in the book. And, that is a primal sort of creativity that we need to get back in touch with. Technology has been distracting us from our true destiny for many years. It's a bit of a false prophet, right? A lot of people chase the altar of, the cool gadget, that cool productivity tool. And I would venture to say, and backed up with research, that it's just not the case. Is that these tools that we think are going to make us more creative and give us more time have actually dragged us into the doldrums of less time and less creativity and less output, instead of enhancing them. We talk in the book about 5, I think, or 6 case studies, really actionable tool that you can use today to overcome the grip of technology. We talk about AI and how AI has been trying for years to figure out how to be more creative, how to tap into more of the emotional construct, and it will never be there. Creativity is a human endeavor. It might fake it a little bit, or they're certainly getting better at it, but it'll never be there. Creativity is a human attribute, and it will never be able to be operated by a machine. In short, I think that technology, our love of the new gadget is fleeting. It comes and goes. But creativity, Josh, creativity lasts forever.
100% agree with you. I think if I could play science fiction for a moment and project 100, 200 years into the future, and AI has developed itself to become prominent in the workforce, prominent in our lives, creativity and that human emotion that you talk about is our contribution, and working together with knowledge at the extent of artificial intelligence is going to be pretty amazing stuff. But that creativity, exactly where you're focusing today, launching point, I think I'll say it here, you writing this book could be kicking off the future of what humans will contribute to society.
I sure hope so, Josh, and maybe somebody will be listening to this podcast in 200 years or whatnot and
Right.
saying, you know what? Wow, he was wrong. And that's okay because,
I doubt they'll say that, Nir.
that's how I feel. We just aren't able to synthetically model what it is inside of every human being, every beating heart on earth has an amazingly noble ability to awaken a creative spirit and a creative way of doing things that is unequal to any potential of any awesome power on earth. We think of power being like an atomic bomb or a crazy weapon or something like that, but power really comes from human potential. And there's nothing more important than unlocking creativity in human potential to enable us to be fully capable of what we're capable of. So very exciting.
Extremely exciting stuff. I cannot wait to check out your book. August 4th is the release date. That's correct?
Yeah, August 4th, but it's on pre-release now. So if you buy it now, I'd love you forever.
Absolutely. I'm definitely going to do that. 92 tools to unlock the secrets to innovation, growth, and sustainability. You gave us one today. Listen to your child's voice. That we can start doing right away. You gave us a lot more information, taking notes, journaling. Yeah, what else would you like to say, Nir? You've given us so much great info, so much great insight. What else would you like to put out there?
Yeah, I appreciate that. If any of this sounds good, Josh, or if you're listening to this podcast and any of this sounds good, I sure would appreciate you picking up a copy of the book. The nice thing is that there's 92 tools in there, and I get this when I'm out consulting. I tell people we're going to get creative, we're going to do some cool stuff, and they're like, "Oh crap, how much is this going to cost me?" Right? Do I have to buy new equipment or new tools or whatnot? Every one of those tools is free, other than the cost of the book, which is, I think $19 right now or $22 or so. Other than the cost of the book, everything in there is free. And you can get a lot of great material on my website as well. That's free too. It's Nir Bashan. My name, NIRBASHAN.com. You can go to the book website, which is not creative at all. It's the creatormindset.com. Probably should have named it something better, but it's creatormindset.com. You can get a copy of the book if any of this sounds interesting. I'd love for you to go through it and then maybe shoot us an email and let us know what you think.
Perfect. I'll put links to that on the episode itself. So check out those links, hit those up, and get those in. Nir, thank you very much for your time today and for sharing your information. And most of all, for the 7 years of, I could imagine, extremely hard work in putting this together and getting your message out there about creativity and how impactful it can be to us, the businesses, our economy, and our future.
Yep, for sure, man. And I really appreciate you having me on here. And I think it's about time that this message gets out, and I really, really hope it helps people.
I'm sure it will. I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to hear what happens about when people buy the book and their futures as well. And that'll do it for another episode of Off the Curriculum. Nir Bashan, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Very thoughtful questions.
I hope that you've taken some key insights away from this week's episode of Off the Curriculum. Knowledge is power, and I'm thankful for Nir Bashan, who has taken years from his life to write and publish The Creator Mindset. I hope you'll pick up a copy of his book and apply his 92 tools to become more creative. The world would truly be a better place with your creativeness in it. Although this episode is over, I don't think we're done with the subject of creativity just yet. I believe there's more knowledge to be found, so let's see what we can uncover next week on Off the Curriculum. Have a great week, everyone. I'll see you then.